And I'm joined by the Director of County Governance Watch, Kevin Osido, as well as Betty Adero, who's the patron of Young Women Forum, as well as Nairobi County Miss President. Welcome. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Karibu sana.
Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the papers. Of course, the BBI is a big story, so they're taking different angles of this particular one. And on the Daily Nation, we are told a fresh start for Kenya. And right here at the side on the Daily Nation, it says, Road to Change begins with a national convention in January to discuss the BBI report, as well as a rare display of unity at launch of a report which has been described as a win-win document. Actually, they do deep on, you look at some of the articles, they say they have run away. It's actually more of a compromise rather than making recommendations that could actually lead to more divisive politics. And you can see even from the event, things are not all unity and happy and roses. Yeah, so what's your take on this top story, the approach by the Daily Nation? I'll start with you, Mr. Osido.
Thank you, Trix. Basically, this is, in my view, a good opportunity for the country to reflect, look back, and as the headline says, in my view, I doubt whether it's really a fresh start for Kenya, but I think that it gives us an opportunity to really provide that fresh start and that freshness, especially given what we saw happening yesterday at the Bomas of Kenya, given the kind of stories that even His Excellency the President shared, and for him to speak for 44 minutes off the cuff for a head of state, just sharing what his vision about the country is.
Very passionately
and
so.
Quite passionately so, and in the local language, which is really Swahili. It therefore meant, even from his dressing, not necessarily in a suit, but looking very people-friendly and people-like this is your event, you want to be here for you. I am hoping that...
pushing anything down your throat.
Exactly. I am hoping that this is going to be an opportunity for us to think through where we are coming from. I'm saying it's really not a fresh start because we have been here before. 2007 happened, and in fact, almost every 5 years when we have our elections, we see all these things happening, but it therefore gives us an opportunity to rethink, reflect, and then, as is rightfully said again, we hope that when January comes, then we can look at the report and ask ourselves what is missing or what do we have which is not working and how do we strengthen it.
Strengthen it. Ms. Adero, what do you think about the headline, A Fresh Start?
Okay, for me, I think the freshness here is for after a long time, Kenyans are able to say, whew, after all the anxiety
and speculation, and
speculation, several versions, of
leaking from
God knows where, causing, total confusion. So when the D-Day came 2 days ago into yesterday, there was that sense of freshness that, so really this is what it is, this is what it is, it is not. And for me, I think just the notion of building a bridge. When you build a bridge, you're connecting one side to another. You're opening up opportunities for higher engagement. And I'm seeing part of the freshness for me is now an opportunity for Kenyans to go back to the drawing board and really agree on the issues they disagree about, and provide themselves that opportunity to converse around solutions on the things that they commonly agree on. When I look at the community participation since the handshake happened and gave birth to the BBI and the formation of the task force, and you could hear Kenyans hungry and thirsty to participate, to be involved at all levels, up to the mashinani level, because it's really about the mashinani man, the mashinani youth, the mashinani woman, and not necessarily about the elite. So for me, I see another opportunity for freshness here, for further engagement. We have about 18 months to see how far we can go as a country in implementing the recommendations. But again, it's not just implementing them, it's about conversing around them, because not everyone agrees with everything that has been proposed in there. But for me, I think this puts us as a country in a good place, in a good path for dialogue, especially on the things we have often disagreed upon.
Now, one of the speeches that stood out was that of the Tanzanian minister, and this is also making part of the many stories that are on the BBI on the Standard, and you're told TZ minister warns against ethnicity, and his speech was quite great. What do you make of it, and his warning against us using our diversity against one another?
You see, for me, what really stood out is what is the significance of Kenya in the global community, and especially given the fact that he said, and I think the former Prime Minister reiterated, and the President also repeated the same, that his own President actually asked him to stay over and sit and share the vision of Tanzania, and especially given the kind of history that Kenya has with the East African community, without necessarily sharing what we mean to the world.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stood out for me was basically lessons that really Kenya should and sometimes I am tempted to say must be able to learn from our neighbors, because Rwanda happened, and look at what's happening in Rwanda today. Of course, they have their own internal issues, which we hear about. We have friends there, we have relatives who engage there.
But it doesn't degenerate to the type
exactly, it doesn't get to that level where you really judge somebody based on his or her last name and where he or she is coming from. And then the minister from Tanzania really brought it home, and he said, you know, Kenya and Tanzania, we have Maasais there, we have Luos there, we have Kikuyus there. In fact, he even said himself, his nose looks like one of a Kikuyu, and he was trying to really make Kenyans understand that this country is very important to the East African region, and that whatever happens in Kenya really affects, and it is true, because we saw it happening in 07 when Uganda, goods could not go to Uganda, and Tanzanians studying in Kenya kept asking, what does this really mean to us? And so I think that as Kenyans, we really need therefore to take this opportunity that has been provided by the BBI moment to really reflect around what exactly are we, and what do we mean to others, and how can we begin a conversation around one Kenya and one people, which is not really based on our own ethnic and negative ethnic differences and communal perspectives of how we look at things. So I think that speech really is supposed to also ring a bell to our politicians, that whatever you say, the narratives that you send out there. Yesterday, the Bomas process through BBI gave the politicians an opportunity to bring out who exactly they are. And I am hoping that we will be able to really watch them and take them by their words, and hope that whatever they said would be true meaning, and which would then be underlined by what the Foreign Affairs Minister from Tanzania really spoke about.
Yes, and just to quote him here in the article, we're told, he said, my fellow politicians in Kenya live up to the expectations of Kenya and other East Africans. Kenyan politicians have all for long been vessels of divisive politics. Until when will this trend continue? A very valid question. And looking, just going through social media posts, there's somebody who actually pointed out that even Tanzania, they have that diversity. Countries such as Nigeria have over 500 tribes. We have 40 what? We behave as if, so that person said, we behave as if it's our oxygen, yet there are countries that have other problems, but tribe is not one of them. Betty?
I'm thinking that the speech by the Tanzanian foreign minister really was the ethos of the whole BBI. Because if you look at all the issues that BBI is attempting to tackle, they all resonate around the issue of negative ethnicity. Ethnicity in itself is a great thing.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. You know, it shows our diversity, who we are as a people, and I'm thinking that is the brand that we need to sell, you know, as Kenyans. But when my tribe, your tribe becomes the reason why you're denied access to something that you're seeking, or an opportunity that you deserve and you qualify for, I think that is where we sort of like go wrong. And I'm thinking Kenya is being watched not only by the East African community, but by the world.
The world,
You know, we are a beacon, you know, of trade. We are a trade hub. We are a hub of stability. Other people look up to us and say, hey, what trend is Kenya setting so that we also, you know, follow up. And I'm thinking learning a lot from just our neighbor in Tanzania is something that all of us, not only the elite, everybody, even what as a mother you tell your own child about, you know, the neighbor's child who belongs to another tribe. It actually, you know, starts from there. But for me, I think the challenge is, what do we do with that? Where do we go from here?
Absolutely.
Except we actually come out and make deliberate efforts at national level, county level, up to mashinani level to kick out negative ethnicity, then I think much of this will just remain rhetoric, and that will be really sad. But if we embrace you know, each other just because we are Kenyans. It doesn't matter what part of Kenya you come from, what tribe or religion or gender, you know, you subscribe to, then I think the sky might just only be the lower limit for us as
and I love
people.
that you pointed out our position internationally, because we rarely think of that when things are falling apart, but then then things happen and we have to deal with it. So when negative headlines come out of Kenya due to ethnicity and what have you, a lot of the times we don't really the foreigners won't be looking at the nitty-gritty. This is happening because of ABCD. It's just taken at surface level. They don't care what the colonialists did. So, I mean, I wonder how this document or these recommendations will actually make us get rid of ethnic division, because at the end of the day, how do you legislate certain things that go down to personal responsibility? It's a question I've been asking for a while now. Now, joining the conversation is TJ Kajwang, who is a Ruaka Member of Parliament. Welcome. As well as Jawas Bigambo, who is a governance expert.
Thank you.
Thank you, gents, for joining us. We were talking about the BBI report, as has been covered here, and focusing on the Tanzanian Foreign Affairs Minister's speech. And he did call for an end to ethnic politics and us representing the East African community more positively. How do you think this document would actually, or these recommendations would put an end to the ethnicity that we look at?
Well, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to discuss with Kenyans this very important subject. You see, the Constitution is a broad document which informs the culture of a people. When we listened to the BBI report yesterday, that was a general statement of principle.
Yes.
It's a statement of constitutional principles within which the proposers of the bill, in this case the committee, would want us to amend the Constitution. It generally informs the broad, or outlines the broad issues under which specific legislations may be made and specific amendments may be made. Now, you may wonder, as I do also, because you see, you cannot legislate people's thinking and people's behavior. It is something which, you know, you must be born with it. You must be brought up with it. You must, yes, something like that. But a country can say some values which are general that people believe. And there are issues which can be thinned down and they can be reduced to legislative proposals which can go into statute. One of the things that, for example, a specific issue which can reduce this issue of ethnicity, you see, is this general discomfiture over people that they do not belong. When you don't belong, you relapse to your cocoon. And this idea of winner take it all has really increased that kind of thinking. And so when you see a big cake being needed, and when you then feel that you belong in some way, or your space is provided, you start thinking of a society rather than as an individual. So in that way, the way, for example, the architecture of the executive is being expanded and the general politics is being expanded, but more so, not just politics, the question of resources. If it is provided so that everybody in any corner of the country feels that he has a share of that national revenue, then people start thinking more of us as a nation rather than as an ethnic bloc.
Javas?
Thank you. All over the world, as it is documented in human history, the spirit of nationhood is never without the best alloy of ethnic varieties. And we are not the first country and the only country that has got ethnic diversity. When the good friend of ours from Tanzania was speaking to us, he was telling us what we know, but what we have refused to adhere to, what we have refused to learn from. And we know, for example, in Tanzania, they've got very many tribes than ours.
Yeah.
But how come it's not a problem there? It is because we hap at the strings of ethnicity for political and individual gain. And that leads us down the road that we walk. I think it would be important for politicians in this country, including my learned senior here, to show and lead by example.
Yes.
That when we have got this kind of diversity, we need to make the better out of it, not the worst. If it's a question of legislation, in the run-up to the 2010 Constitution, we said that then we need a commission that can speak to us and lead us to national unity. We came up with the National Cohesion Integration Commission.
Yes.
To what extent has that commission made us a nation that coheres to mutual interests? Through that mutuality, it has not. In fact, even politicians themselves have reason to fight that commission.
Said commission, yeah.
When that commission has come up with reports, it's been poured on cold water. In the end, like Martin Luther King Jr. in his time, you cannot legislate morality, but you can come up with legislation that can stop a fellow man or woman from lynching you or engaging in mob justice or injustice for that matter.
Right.
So I think moving forward, we've got so much to learn.
We do.
And so much to do.
As we pointed out earlier, countries such as Nigeria have over 500 tribes. They have other problems, but tribe is not their number one issue, especially when it comes to politics. And when you look at Rwanda, they had a problem, just two ethnic division. It's not even a real division, but then they had a conflict based on that. So should we be borrowing from certain countries, such as Rwanda?
Well, you know, looking at Kenya, really, to be fair to Kenyans, it's an overstatement.
It is.
If you look across Africa, and if you look at Europe, for example, where in Germany, for example, where the questions of ethnic divide caused the Holocaust and so on, a student of history can easily think that ours is an overstatement. But generally, people react to fears.
Okay.
In every issue of morality, there is the embedded fear that everybody expresses. And people people relapse back to family.
Okay.
Even when you leave ethnic divisions, you feel your area of comfort becomes the family unit. And so it is the identification of these issues that make people rather become individual, that when we have a conversation over, and when they are made, you know, when temperatures cool, you see Kenyans now with the launch of the BBI must punguza kidogo. Because you see, we politicians, and I included, you know, we have polarized the thinking of the ordinary Kenyan, that we think that the elections is the end in itself. And so after elections, people think of another elections.
And what,
And every single thing, including board, school board, is about elections. But now we must speak as the political class in a way that allows Kenyans to know that there are more to society than elections. And the key thing is about tumbo. I mean, if people can be happier and they can have disposable resources within themselves, they start thinking of other issues being more important than politics. So in this way, I think it then provides Kenyans with an opportunity now not to be overly concerned about elections, but be concerned about things which make them happier than participating in the economy.
And
in addition to that, it's not wrong in my view to learn from other countries, because as we already discussed earlier on, that Kenya has a quite higher standing in most of our views, that we have a lot to share with not only East and Central Africa, but indeed the global community. And I am convinced that as a country, we are making those very baby deliberate steps to deal with our issues. And for instance, if you look at the recently launched education curriculum, it emphasizes a lot on values, and part of that is really patriotism and love for each other, and the desire to just think beyond your ethnic community and your own ethnic identity as a measure of how you want to treat each other. And if you look at even what county governments are doing. For instance, there is a lot of discussions around inclusion, and this is because Kenyans know that one of our biggest concerns and our biggest issues is negative ethnicity, which really manifests a lot during our elections, but that is only because of how we, of course, have seen resources being shared.
Yeah.
But if you look at the steps that are being made, including at the counties where, of course, as Java said, there are frameworks and legislative measures that have been put in place. For instance, that for every appointment that you make, you must ensure that there is a ratio that is as representative as is possible. Some counties have not really complied with that, but of course you can see that there are certain steps that Kenyans are making to be able to deal with those issues. And so I think that because we are talking about a fresh start, that this is going to be an opportunity with the launch of the BBI report yesterday, that we are going to begin looking at what are these lessons that we can learn from other countries, including in abroad, and what have they been able to do to deal with their issues, that basically the things that divide them, and what are these things that we can pick as Kenyans and put more investment so that we can address issues that then divide us as opposed to things that really unite us as a people.
Okay, Ms. Dera.
Well, for me, I think on the issue of negative ethnicity, we have a lot more to do than to say. Right?
Okay.
We need to go beyond just the rhetoric of, oh, let's be together, oh, we are one. It needs to reflect in what you tell your child. It needs to reflect in what you do, how you appoint people into positions, or how you divide that national cake. And I think I just want to point out something, that it is almost impossible for Kenyans to look at things not through the eyes of ethnicity. Anything that happens or needs to happen, the first thing that comes to your mind, okay, where is my tribe? Or where is my sub-tribe in that whole thing? And when something wrong happens to a politician or to someone in public office, and they're being prosecuted by law, the first thing is, oh,
What
my
tribe
community is being
he or
finished.
she,
We are being finished. We are being targeted. And when you're doing that thing, there was no community there. It was you, as an individual. And it is just so sad to see how their own communities again begin to resonate. With that. You stole billions. Then your community will come and rally behind you, thinking that our community is being finished. So for me, I think on the issue of ethnicity, we need to be real, with ourselves. It's something that has been with us even before independence. It just gets worse, by the day. But we need to be seen, to be making some very, very practical steps, as has been, proposed by my fellow panelists, and actually putting our money where our mouth is. If that is what you say, actually do it, and let us see you do it. Let us see you do it.
Honorable Kajwang, you are the very center of the Kibra by-election. If we are being practical, how close are we to this thing that we are all suggesting?
I laughed when President Uhuru said, Kibra was the best example of the effects of the handshake. And I agree with him. It is we politicians who are really fighting. When you see the jostlings and the stone throwing, for this time we were the schoolboys who were carrying stones and fighting people. But Wananchi were very fine. They had a lot to share, and they could move from one house to the other, and from one bedroom to the next. I tell you. And he gave a nice story of this friend of his, a lady, who said, why didn't you make it just 2 weeks longer so we could,
eat more.
You see, politicians are a reflection of the society. In fact, they are the worst fearful people, I included, because I interpret the society and I want to run with it. And so you think that the society bothers about who gets elected in Kibra? They are not. Really, they are just waiting for their opportunity to say it on the ballot. When some of these things happen more regularly, like I hope for the first time, when you look at the constitutional amendment of 2009 that led to the 210, it was very fractious. And we became bananas and oranges. And that was a hard one, because it was like a general, in fact, more than a general election. But I am seeing a consensus, at least out of Wananchi, that there are issues that wananchi can come together on.
Right.
And I'm foreseeing that we are not going to have a very hard time as we did. If some of these things will roll over time. And I think we should not beat ourselves so hard. We did well, and the world praised Kenya for the constitutional amendment of 2010.
Yes.
It is 10 years down the line. It needed to be audited. Any society should audit itself.
Sure.
And I think the BBI have done two things together. They have audited the constitution that everybody has wanted, that, and proposed how to fix the 20%. You remember the 20% that has already been lingering?
Yes.
And so it is an opportunity that if then Kenyans can come together, we will just be doing fine to rectify our societal approach as we grow as a nation.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, on the other side of this conversation, we'll be taking a look at how we're going to move forward with this conversation, how the people will get this information, and will it actually have to end in a referendum, or are there other means of achieving the proposals that have been made in this referendum, in this rather proposal? And then we have the issue of devolution and how it's affecting, it's going to affect actually and change and make devolution work as it promises. But for now, we're going to take a short break. We have a special interview by the U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Kyle McCarter. It's Thanksgiving. We were promised turkey. We hope it's going to be arriving in studio. But then let's have that before we go on with our discussion.